Are just millennials screwed?
By Natalie Stoy,
Jordan Keel.
Nick Kramer.
Paige Larkin,
McKenna Kewen.
and Emily Lockhart.
Here are some perspectives that we're going to be looking at. We're going to be looking at millennials' economic challenges, Gen Z's financial struggles, personal stories, bring data to life, some ethical considerations, and resilience and adaptation.
The Economy is a Young People Screwing Machine by Michael Hobbs.
How do you feel about this quote, Natalie?
I found that it mainly captures like the frustration that many millennials feel about the system. It's like rigged against them. The central idea here is that millennials are not struggling financially because of people's personal failure, but because of widespread systematic issues like rising student debts, housing costs, and job instability and stagnant wages.
Some
I'll
of
use
the questions we're going to be talking about are why are millennials blamed for their money problems? How do rising costs and little wage growth affect young people's futures? And what should older generations do to help younger ones?
I find with the first one, most like when they were younger, they were like put into college. Like in high school, that's
Yeah.
all they were talked about. So when going into college, like they were set with that. And then student debt started going up, housing started going up, but their wages and were not. So when they had their work, they it wasn't
Yeah.
equaling.
They weren't expected to just work out of high school and they were judged if they weren't.
I also feel like a lot of is we aren't really taught how to like handle our money. We weren't really told like, oh, save all this for college because you're gonna need this. Like it's just expected that you can just apply for financial aid or oh, you can just apply for loans. Like we were never told like, hey, save this amount of money because you're gonna have to pay for classes.
Yeah, I think it's just expected that you always just have the money to be able to go to school, and then you get out of school and you realize you have so much debt that you have to pay off, and a lot of times what you make, you can't pay off that debt.
Yeah, the system, it doesn't reward you as much for like getting a higher education than it used to do. I feel it used to be, hey, you go to college, you get set up for a lot of financial gain in the future, and then you realize as the economy declines and your wage stops getting paid that you can't pay for the expenses. College was supposed to make you more money, not put you in the negative.
For the second question, I found that like this basically means that young adults often have to work many jobs or borrow money, making it harder to plan for their future.
I agree. I feel like millennials right now are being blamed, but then as we get older, Gen Z is going to be blamed. It's just a never-ending cycle.
I think you're judged almost if you're not moving out at 18, but right now it's so expensive to move out. Like if you do move out and obviously you don't have a lot of money, you're broke, then you're judged for not being able to afford anything. So it's like a lose-lose situation.
Like when you look at rent, a lot of times paying for rent for an apartment is almost as much as paying for a house mortgage. So it's like, what do you want to do? Are you going to pay rent and pay basically a mortgage for something that you'll never be able to own, or throw a whole bunch of money at a house that you might not want for the rest of your life?
For the third question, like I think McKenna said that it's just going to be a repeating cycle. I feel like as a society, we just need to work towards it and actually discuss it more instead of just kind of pushing it in the back of our minds. And I know it's not necessarily like all people, it's also politics go into it, but it's just we all have to understand and be respectful. And when people can't move out at the age of 18 or even 20, some people are saving and still living with parents. Like we have to understand and be more kind and fair with those situations.
I also think that older generations shouldn't be so quick to put the blame on younger generations because it had to start somewhere. We need to work together instead of pushing the blame, pushing the blame, pushing the blame. It's a never-ending cycle.
Agreed.
Some perspective on millennials' economic challenges.
To what extent are millennials' economic struggles the result of systematic issues such as policy decisions, wage stagnation, and housing markets versus personal choices and cultural shifts? When I first looked at the question, I thought about how minimum wage was like just raised. I think when I made minimum wage, it was like $10 and some odd cents, and now it's $12. But even then, like you can't live off of that.
Yeah, I have two jobs, and one of them is minimum wage, and I know for a fact there's no way I could live off minimum wage.
Emily, how do you think minimum wage living on it would affect your personal choices?
I think I wouldn't be in college if I only lived off minimum wage because I wouldn't be able to afford it, and I would not have a car probably, or at least the one I have.
Yeah, I'd like to add that I currently make double at my job, but I still couldn't live on my own even if I wanted to with how expensive Detroit is.
I make a little bit over double and I work a lot of overtime, and I still, with college, paying off college, I still feel broke all the time.
I think that is a cultural shift in itself. It used to be you can just be in college, work no job, and uh be able to
Pay it off at some point.
provide for yourself, like be able to do that sustainably. And now as an example, Emily shared that she has to work two jobs to be able to go to college, and I think that's a big change. How do we feel about tuition prices and the housing market?
Tuition is crazy.
It's a
Mm-hmm.
lot.
This
It's
whole year, I've gotten a lot of scholarships my freshman year, but like this coming year, I don't have as many at all. So I'll be paying like almost 30 grand for tuition, and I really don't want to get a loan or be in debt. I
Yeah,
feel like.
I'm in the same boat. All of my school was paid for up until this year. And then, of course, the new administration, I lost my Pell Grant because they say I can afford it. I can't. So, it's just political.
We can
Right.
all agree that a lot of the
Um,
struggles millennials face are they're less about personal choices and cultural shifts, and they have been affected a lot by policy and wage stagnation. Gen Z's financial struggles.
So I found that Gen Z struggles are a lot similar to millennials, where they have a hard time finding like struggles with rent and housing and school and the inflation and the way that there's not a lot of there's a lot of jobs, but there's not a lot of jobs you can get while trying to obtain a degree. So it's hard to find a good job to be able to pay for school.
I feel like also it's so hard finding a job that you make enough money is because you have to have a
Mhm.
degree or a credential for that job.
it's hard for people to understand that you can't just work one job,
Mhm.
especially with like
Yeah.
making bare minimum wage.
And I also find it interesting that there's a huge stigma that people or older generations think that younger generations, one, don't work, or two, don't want to work. And
Yeah.
that is just so completely false. I find
Yeah.
that younger people are working far more and more effectively than older generations.
Agreed. Yeah. Everyone thinks we're very lazy.
I think
Yeah.
they got
Everybody.
that from the fact that we don't necessarily want to live in the life they lived, but we have to pay double as much as they did.
Yep.
Right. Or
Mhm.
it's like Gen Z complains too much. No, we just have standards and boundaries. There's a
Yeah.
complete
Yeah.
difference. At least we're speaking up for ourselves, and that's the only way to get actual systemic change.
There is a picture. It just shows like the economy based on now, past generations. It's like everything is a lot higher and harder to balance with life.
Yeah, I feel like there was a big culture shift of in
Mhm.
working that was like boomers had this that like work is life, like we need to go to work. That is my role as a human. It's to make a product, and I think we shifted away from that. Yet somehow we end up working harder than them, maintaining two jobs.
Right. And it's also like we work to live, not live to work.
Yes, I agree with that.
It's a huge
Yeah.
misconception. Like there should be a balance. I'm only working so I can have a good life outside of work.
It
Yep.
was a lot easier to live off of one income than two back then, and because of the economy.
Like the
How,
standard of living is so low.
this personal stories, we've been talking a lot about what we have going on. I want to look at this slide. Sarah Martin, she has a lot of struggles with like things like credit card debt, and Spencer Cameron's experience with unemployment. It's like both of these challenges, they both really happen a lot in the Gen Z culture. It's millennials during the same age, they didn't have to worry about things like credit. It's Gen Z, we get out of high school, now we got to focus on where we're going to live. Well, with these hard financial decisions that you have to make, getting a car, oftentimes Gen Z decides they go in debt, college, car, house, take out a loan, build your credit score. It's hard to just start off at zero. It feels like either you're granted with a system and you live upper class and your parents are able to help you move out, or you have to make the hard decision of going in debt and just really taking financial independence.
But it's so hard to build credit without being able
Mhm.
to like get a loan or do anything like that. Like you literally have to have credit to build credit, and it makes it
Mhm.
so hard.
It's similar
I
in like job markets too for hiring. Just because you do get a degree doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to get into the job that you're wanting.
Or we'll say like, oh, you need like 2 years experience in this thing. And
Yes.
Yeah.
It's like, how am I going
Just
to get experience if you aren't hiring me? How am I going to get credit if you're not letting me get a credit card?
Yep.
Right.
I'm gonna go ahead to the next slide, which talks about some ethical considerations.
So, yeah, ethical concerns arise when examining the economic challenges facing millennials and Gen Z, so especially around fairness and social responsibility. So, are older generations accountable for policies that disadvantaged both millennials and Gen Z? Because many policies around housing, education, labor, and healthcare were shaped decades ago, and often by people in power.
Most of the time, it's people in their 70s who are making these laws and making these rules. So they are still considering when they were 17, 20 years old.
Yeah, and the people who are in power were also born into privilege.
I feel like that's true. It's an echo chamber. They live in affluence and then they get in office and it's less about what can I do to help the people and more than it's more about what can I do to help myself. I do think older generations should be held accountable for what they've done to the economy. They had stuff pushed onto them and instead of taking the stand, they continued just to bring it down with them. I think a lot of mistakes older generations have were like they didn't make the economy sustainable. They tried to make it as profitable as they could and like we're suffering from that.
Yeah, it's just crazy to think that like the United States is always thought of as like this is the American dream and I can go there and do anything and all of that, but like we're the country that's most in debt.
The recession we're headed towards now, not our fault. Neither was the one that happened when we were like 5 through 10, you know what I mean? So it had to have stemmed from somewhere. So it doesn't just happen on its own.
I want to talk about the second part, which is what moral obligations do we have to create a more just economic future?
Yeah, I mean, change only comes when you talk about it. Like, if we all just sit back and watched it happen, then we're accountable just as much as for millennials, like anything before us.
I think I'll switch to resilience and adaptation.
What I found from this was that Gen Z demonstrates strength by carefully managing their finances, balancing several jobs, and applying for scholarships to tackle money challenges, especially like with tuition nowadays. But we aren't simply victims of a flawed system. Instead, I feel like we actively are we are just driven together, and it's hard to think when other people try to push us down when we're so constantly trying to work hard. Everyone wants to succeed in life, that's a given. Everyone wants a big old house. We are driven for that, but it's hard when we aren't given the system to it.
I feel like a lot of this connotation that I don't want to say like I guess the older generations have on the younger generations, it comes from media, I feel like. You guys are talking a lot about like perspectives of like people you know working multiple jobs. I mean, all of us here, I think we've all worked very hard to be where we are today. And I feel like that's more people I know than more people I don't know. I still feel like there's a lot of cultural things that come with having multiple jobs that it's formed strength, you know. I'll talk to people I know who are like, yeah, dude, just like worked 18 hours today. I'm beat. And there's a certain pride in it because I know that person's doing all they can to succeed. And I feel like that's something that maybe the older generation has experienced, but maybe doesn't recognize that we're also doing now. The next slide, which is real world.
So I find that young people today face real money problems that are easy to see in graphs and pictures. The cost of things like housing, school, and healthcare keep going up, but wages don't grow. This also involves millennials and Gen Z workers have to work multiple jobs or gig jobs to pay their bills. This creates a group called the precariat people with an unstable work and money. Like even like the housing and wages growth, it's been since 1990. It stopped in 2020, but houses were going way up while wages were they were going, but it's not as much. So it's just like a constant thing where houses are going to continue rising, and at some point wages will still go up, but not at the extent of houses.
I'm gonna go to the next slide, some questions. How do you guys think economic challenges shape young people's identities and future goals?
The economic challenges shape young people and who they are because they think of like, oh, well, I need to have this much money to be able to do what I need to do to have a successful career. And then a lot of times I find they're stressing about their economic stance in the world. And they're like, well, I want to do all these things and then I can't because I have to pay for school.
It also comes with just like parents teaching not to like make fun of other kids for that, and like just being respectful and the fairness and kindness with the whole situations.
Yeah, I think that kind of plays into like the second question with what actions can society take to create fair economic opportunities. Like I just feel like breaking up that stigma of it being embarrassing or not having enough money and stuff like that.
Yeah, and I also think some actions younger generations could take is to not go into a career path simply due to the financial outcome, but still, pursue passions. So to flip and kind of, find that passion again where people enjoy what they do, I think that will benefit it.
I think that's really important because it's like the society's gone from like what can I do to best financially support myself less than what can I do to make myself the most happy. The more we listen to like people's personal stories about their lives and how they their passions, we gain a little bit more insight how a general population feels rather than just the incentive that like you're born to work. I think doing what makes you happy really does contribute to the economy best.
I think
I
that's
think
a
that
good way to wrap it.
Thank you for listening to our discussion. This has been Are Millennials Just Screwed?